Encyclopedyfy reads for you. Today, The Haunting of Bly Manor. The Haunting of Bly Manor is an American supernatural horror drama streaming television series, created by Mike Flanagan for Netflix, and loosely based on Henry James's work, particularly his 1898 novella The Turn of the Screw. It is the follow-up series to The Haunting of Hill House and the second entry in the Haunting Anthology series. The creative team and much of the cast of Hill House returned for Bly Manor, but the two series' narratives are not connected. The Haunting of Bly Manor premiered on Netflix on October 9, 2020. Victoria Pedretti, Oliver Jackson Cohen, Henry Thomas, Kate Siegel, Carla Gugino, and Catherine Parker return as part of the cast for the second series, portraying different characters. Synopsis. The story tells of a young governess hired by a man to look after his niece and nephew at the family country house after they fall into his care. Arriving at the Bly estate, she begins to see apparitions that proceed to haunt the premises. Cast. Victoria Pedretti as Danielle Donnie Clayton. Oliver Jackson Cohen as Peter Quint. Amelia Eve as Jamie. Carla Gugino as older Jamie, the storyteller. Nia Miller as Hannah Groves. Rahul Kohli as Owen Sharma. Kamal Khan as older Owen. Tahir Sharif as Rebecca Jessel. Emily B. Smith as Flora Wingrave. Christy Burke as older Flora, the bride. Benjamin Evan Ainsworth as Miles Wingrave. Thomas Nicholson as older Miles, the bride's brother. Henry Thomas as Henry Wingrave. Duncan Fraser as older Henry, the father of the bride. Episodes. 1. The Great Good Place, in Northern California, 2007, a woman attends a rehearsal dinner for a wedding. There, she tells the story of an au pair, which dates back to 1987 in London. American native Donnie Clayton is hired by Henry Wingrave to look after his niece and nephew in their manor in Bly, relocated to Hampshire, originally set in Essex. When Donnie arrives at the manor with the cook, Owen, she meets the children, Miles and Flora, and the housekeeper, Hannah Groves. Flora warns Donnie not to leave her room at night, but Donnie ignores this. She finds many talismans spread throughout the manor, one of which belongs to the previous au pair, Rebecca Jessel, who allegedly killed herself. Hannah describes the talismans as a protection for Flora. When Donnie stumbles on the Lady of the Lake's talisman one night, she is locked in Flora's cupboard by Miles. She panics and sees a specter with glowing eyes she has seen repeatedly in a mirror in the back of the closet. Donnie is let out of the closet a few hours later and the Lady of the Lake's talisman is back under Flora's dresser, as usual. She notices muddy footsteps entering the manor, and when she follows them outside, she sees Miles and Flora staring at her from their bedroom windows. 2. The Pupil. Donnie has a conversation with the children about locking her in the closet and tells them that while she forgives them, she does not believe their story. In a flashback to his days in prep school, Miles climbs a high tree and jumps, breaking his arm. Miles' behavior in prep school becomes increasingly erratic, picking fights, killing small animals, and he's eventually expelled. It is suggested that Miles wanted to be expelled, as he holds a letter from Flora that says "Come home." In the present, Donnie makes Flora and Miles do the house chores, giving Hannah, the housekeeper, and Jamie, the gardener, a break. Later, Flora tidies up Donnie's room and Donnie has a panic attack when Flora tries on a pair of broken glasses she finds among Donnie's things. Donnie rushes outside, struggling to breathe, and where she is comforted by Jamie. Miles acts unnervingly adult-like toward Donnie, which creeps her out. While playing a game of hide-and-seek, Donnie discovers a photo of Rebecca and her lover. Her lover is the same apparition Donnie saw on the parapet earlier, and he appears there again. Miles falls unconscious and distracts Donnie from the ghost. When Donnie's back is turned, the ghost grins eerily at Miles. 3. The Two Faces. Part 1, a flashback to a year before reveals that the ghost whom Donnie saw earlier is Peter Quinn, who works with Henry and meets Rebecca Jessel when she interviews for the au pair position. Rebecca arrives at Bly Manor with Peter. They flirt and begin a relationship. Flora gifts Rebecca the doll she made of her. Peter becomes possessive of Rebecca and increasingly jealous of Rebecca's interactions with Owen. The photo that Donnie found is revealed to have been taken by Peter in the off-limits wing of the house, and that Hannah disapproved of their relationship. In the present, the police fail to find Peter on the grounds. The adults stay awake the night and, assuming Peter is alive, deduce that Peter may not know Rebecca is dead and, therefore, may be stalking the grounds. Flora is found down by the lake in the morning, staring at Rebecca's ghost. Flora and Miles declare story time, and Miles presents a story about puppets who forgot their maker and mocked him. But story time ends abruptly when the phone rings to let them know that Owen's mother had died. As Jamie leaves for the night, Donnie has a panic attack once again and screams as she sees the specter with the glowing eyes appear before her. 4. The Way It Came. In flashbacks, Donnie is engaged to her childhood friend Edmund, despite hiding her reservations and her sexuality. She feels pressured to continue with the engagement as Edmund's family has already accepted her as one of their own. One night during a date, Edmund realizes Donnie does not want to marry him and the two fight in the car. As Edmund exits the car angrily, he fails to notice an approaching truck that runs him over and kills him. A traumatized Donnie sees Edmund's specter for the first time at the hospital and plans to leave the country without telling anyone. Edmund's oblivious mother visits Donnie and gives her Edmund's glasses just before Donnie's taxi to the airport arrives. At Bly Manor, Donnie opts out of Owen's mother's funeral, but joins the rest of the house staff at a bonfire afterward. There, Jamie initiates a traditional remembrance of the deceased, throwing bones into the fire, but Donnie does not participate. Donnie and Jamie go to the greenhouse together and kiss, during which Donnie is frightened by Edmund's specter. Later that night, Donnie awakens in a drunken stupor, but Flora notices the faceless doll in her dollhouse. Flora and Miles distract Donnie, preventing her from seeing a white-clad female spirit wandering the manor. After putting the children back to bed, Donnie returns to the fire pit and burns Edmund's glasses. 5. The Altar of the Dead. Hannah Grows, the housekeeper, flashes back and forth between events at different points in time, some real and some imaginary. She repeatedly returns to the day she first interviews Owen for the cook position, as well as the night of the bonfire when he offers to take her to Paris. She also returns to the time of Rebecca's employment at the manor. Hannah disapproves of Rebecca's affair with Peter Quinn, whom she catches stealing from the Wingrave's belongings. Hannah flashes back to one night, where Peter tells Rebecca that he plans to move to America and convinces her to join him later on. As Peter leaves Rebecca's room, he is spotted by Miles and Flora, then suddenly killed by the lady in the lake, the faceless white-clad ghost who tracks Mud into the house. Immediately reincarnating as a ghost, Peter discovers he has the ability to possess Miles. Returning to Hannah's interview with Owen, he warns her something is wrong with Miles. This culminates in Hannah tracking Miles down to the woods, where she sees him speaking to Peter. Peter possesses Miles and shoves Hannah down the well, killing her. Hannah stares down the well when Donnie first arrives at the manor, revealing that she was killed just before that moment and has unwittingly been a ghost since Donnie's arrival. The episode ends back at the bonfire, where Hannah agrees to go to Paris with Owen, only to look up and see him toasting her goodbye as he leaves with Jamie. Hannah chases after them, calling for Owen to wait, but they fade into the darkness. 6. The Jolly Corner. Flashbacks reveal that Henry was sleeping with his brother Dominic's wife Charlotte before their deaths and is Flora's biological father. After deducing this, Dominic cuts ties with Henry, reasserting himself as Flora's father and forbidding Henry to contact the family or set foot in Bly Manor. Dominic and Charlotte then travel to India in an attempt to salvage their marriage, but are killed there in an accident. In the present, Henry drinks heavily and refuses to answer Donnie's calls when Flora behaves strangely and sleepwalks. At night he calls the manor hoping Flora will answer, hanging up without a word when anybody else does. Donnie bonds with Jamie and the two sleep together. Meanwhile, Flora repeatedly dream hops, flashing back to the past and dreams about Charlotte and a faceless boy ghost she found in her room. She also speaks to Rebecca's ghost, who visits her at night and is the cause of these occurrences. Flora, tired of the dream hopping, confronts Rebecca's ghost one night when Donnie suddenly enters her room. Donnie sees Rebecca's ghost, as well as Peter's ghost in the hallway. As she tries to flee with Flora, Miles approaches Donnie from behind and knocks her unconscious. 7. The Two Faces. Part 2. In flashbacks, the newly dead Peter learns the mechanics of being a ghost at Bly Manor. He is able to possess the living temporarily, but can do so permanently if he is invited. If a ghost remains in Bly Manor for too long, they will lose their face along with their sense of self. Peter reveals himself as a ghost to Rebecca and convinces her they can be together forever if she invites him to possess her. Rebecca agrees to this, but Peter walks into the lake in her body, drowning her and rendering her a ghost as well. Rebecca is horrified and feels betrayed by this, but Peter convinces her of a new plan. Using the same method, they will permanently possess Miles and Flora, letting them start new lives together. In the present, Peter, Rebecca, Miles, and Flora bind and gag Dunny in the attic while the ghosts enact their plan. Miles and Flora seemingly both invite them in, letting Peter and Rebecca possess them permanently. When Hannah calls out to them from nearby, Peter, as Miles, distracts her and leads her to the well where he killed her, forcing her to accept that she is a ghost. In the attic, Flora reveals that she and Rebecca only pretended to carry out the full possession and that Rebecca's ghost is still separate. Flora frees Dunny, who attempts to escape from the manor with her. On their way out, Dunny is attacked by the lady in the lake. 8. The romance of certain old clothes. Centuries ago, the owner of Bly Manor, Willoughby, dies, orphaning his two daughters, Viola and Perdita. Viola arranges a marriage to their distant cousin, Arthur Lloyd, to Perdita's chagrin, who has developed feelings for Lloyd as well. After birthing a daughter Isabel, Viola falls ill with a lung disease. During a priest's visit, Viola refuses her last rites, insisting that she will not leave. She becomes increasingly bitter and angry as her disease worsens, and she is isolated from the family, frequently emerging from her bedroom to search for her daughter. Perdita, no longer able to tolerate her sister's worsening condition, smothers Viola to death and marries Arthur herself shortly afterward. Having refused to leave Earth after death, Viola's spirit is trapped in a large chest in the manor, filled with dresses and jewelry she bequeathed to Isabel. Arthur's finances dwindle and, at risk of losing the house, Perdita opens the chest, hoping to sell Isabel's inheritance to keep them afloat. Viola's spirit emerges from the chest and kills Perdita. Finding Perdita's corpse, Arthur fears the chest is cursed and sinks it into the lake on the property before leaving with Isabel. Viola becomes the lady in the lake, emerging from the water at night to search the manor for her daughter and killing anyone else in her path. Her memory fading altogether along with her face over the centuries. 9. The Beast in the Jungle. As Viola drags Dunny by the throat, she is intercepted by Flora. Viola's ghost, whose sole purpose is to look for her daughter, carries Flora to the lake to drown her. Dunny then saves Flora by letting Viola's ghost inhabit her body, in effect releasing all the previously trapped souls that died in the house over the centuries. Henry returns to Bly Manor to raise the children as his own in America, whilst Owen and Jamie find Hannah's body in the well. Dunny and Jamie leave for America to start a life together and eventually get engaged. After 5 years, Dunny starts to see Viola's reflection and worries her appearance may harm Jamie. During their visit to Owen's restaurant in France, he reveals that Flora and Miles do not recall the events at Bly Manor and only have happy memories. Dunny wakes one night with her hand around Jamie's neck. Not risking Jamie's life, Dunny returns to Bly Manor and drowns herself in the lake, taking Viola's place. The storyteller, a now middle-aged Jamie, ends the story and enjoys the wedding reception of a now grown-up Flora, with Miles, Owen, and Henry. In her hotel room, Jamie waits by the door, hoping to reunite with Dunny's ghost, who watches over her as she falls asleep. Reception. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the series holds a certified fresh rating of 87% based on 86 reviews, and the average rating is 7.27 of 10. The critical consensus reads, "It may not be as scary as its predecessor, but with plenty of spooky tricks inside its haunted halls and a strong sense of heart." The Haunting of Bly Manor is another solid entry into Mike Flanagan's growing horrorography. At Metacritic, the series received a weighted average score of 62 out of 100 based on 17 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Encyclopedyfy read it for you. Please help the channel with your like, subscribe and tell us what you want your next reading to be.